Hello ladies and gentlemen, Jeremy Smith here once again. I know that I was telling you guys that I was going to wait until the Nikon D800 and D4 became available before I did my first review. But I've since changed my mind because I recently got my hands on something interesting that I thought I could do a review on in the meantime. And that is this camera here. The Sony NEX-7. Looks like a very interesting camera so far. Whenever mirrorless cameras first started becoming available, I was kind of hesitant to say anything. The idea seemed kind of fascinating. Take a APS-C sensor from a DSLR and put it in a much smaller body. At first, I wasn't really sure because the downside to having an APS-C size sensor in a small camera is the fact that while it gives you very good image quality, that larger sensor also means that you must have a much larger lens to cover the same focal range. So we see a lot of cameras, like the Nikon P500 and the Canon SX series of cameras. And on all those, they'll have tremendous zoom, like 30, 35 times zoom. The amount just keeps increasing as more and more time goes on. A lot of those will be equivalent to a 600 or 700 millimeter or even longer lens on the telephoto end. And the reason all those cameras can do that is because they have a tiny little sensor, and so there's like some insane crop factor of like 7 or 8 times to get to 35 millimeter. Focal length. So because of the small sensor, you can have a very broad zoom range in a small camera with a small lens. This is kind of different because say I'll take the lens off. I'm going to shoot some closer shots of this in just a moment. But this is the standard 18 to 55 lens on this, and it's about the same size as a Nikon or Canon or Sony 18 to 55 lens for a full-size DSLR. If I take this lens off, which as I said earlier, I'll give you some close shots in a moment, but you can see in there that's your sensor, and it's APS-C size, which is quite impressive. This one right here uses the 24.3 megapixel sensor, which is actually the same sensor that's used in Sony's higher-end cameras, like the, I'll say higher-end DSLR cameras, the SLT A65 and the SLT A77. So it's actually that same exact sensor. So you get that very good image quality, but in a smaller body. Sony's previous NEX cameras, like the NEX-5, for example, those cameras were more aimed towards more entry-level and mid-range users. The NEX-7 is actually designed to give you a lot of the features that you typically find on a higher-end DSLR. Something like the A77 or like a Canon 7D or Nikon D300S. So this camera here, it has, first of all, it has a full-size hot shoe on it, so that you can actually attach Sony's full-size flashes to it, so you don't have to use the small proprietary shoe that's on Sony's other NEX cameras. The other thing about this one is you actually have a viewfinder, which is very nice. So you have the optical finder. This one also has a flash built in. All the other Sony NEX models actually have a small accessory flash that attaches to a proprietary shoe on top. So this one right here, actually has that built-in flash, and then you have the larger hot shoe. Whenever the NEX-5 became available, I thought, man, this is really awesome. 16 megapixel sensor, looks good. I wish I could put a pocket wizard on it. Well, on the NEX-7, you can put a pocket wizard on it, thanks to the full-size shoe. Of course, it is a standard Minolta slash Sony style hot shoe, so you would have to get an adapter to go to the standard type. But it is a full-size shoe, just like on the Alpha DSLRs. So that's a very nice feature. The build quality is improved. It is a metal body. I was expecting this to be something like a Canon G12 as far as the weight is concerned, but it actually isn't. It's actually fairly light. So it's, it's a magnesium alloy body. There are also 2 command dials on here because they know that the user, or the targeted user for a camera like this, is going to be interested in adjusting a lot of the manual settings. Hi guys, just continuing the review here. I'm shooting this video with the Canon 5D, and there is a record limit. So anyways, but picking up once again, I was just saying how this one here, how the NEX-7, with it being aimed towards more, more advanced amateur and pro level users, the controls are substantially better than the other NEX cameras. This one does have 2 command dials on it, so you actually have the ability to adjust your shutter speed and your aperture independently of each other. So it's not quite as menu driven. It's still not quite like a DSLR. I mean, obviously, if you have a camera of this size, you can't put as many dedicated buttons and controls and dials and switches, on the body. But the menu interface is fairly intuitive, and I'm going to go over all that in a moment. I'll show you some close-ups. But all in all, it looks like a very, very good camera so far. I've only taken a few sample shots tonight. I set up a little test scene to do some high ISO testing, and I'm of course going to link to that. I'll probably toss those photos on Flickr, I'm sure. All of those were shot in RAW, and I'm going to use Adobe Lightroom to convert those files. And I'll probably do some samples with Lightroom noise reduction and without, so that way you can kind of get a better idea. Just giving it just a quick look, just kind of glancing, which I've also looked at some of the files from the A77. I expect this camera to be very similar since it's the same sensor. It looks very, very good. The cameras that use this 24 megapixel sensor, like the A77, A65, and this NEX-7, I would say that 24 megapixel sensor is probably the best APS-C sensor as far as I'm concerned, at least that I've used so far. The next best would be the 16 megapixel sensor that's in like the Nikon D7000 and like the Sony NEX-5N. This sensor does seem to be quite a bit better than that. Well, I say quite a bit. So far, it looks like it gives you about a half stop, a stop worth of improvement in actual noise. But I'm going to look at those files closer, and I'll post the samples. Anyways, I'm not sure how I'm going to be breaking up this video, but now we're going to move on to all the menus.